In our last lesson, we'll do a little bit of cleanup work, and we'll also learn a fast way to prevent interpenetration between the t-shirt and sweater. First, let's start with our cleanup work. This will be very fast. Let's head over to our outliner. We have several end cloth nodes here. It'd be nice to have them contained into just one node, just to kind of keep things clean and organized. So with all end cloth nodes selected, you can go ahead and group them together. We'll use Control G. Let's go ahead and rename this group to endcloth_clothing pig01. Now, to make this very clear that this should not be transformed at all, we'll go ahead and highlight all of our transform channels from scale to translation. We'll go ahead and right click and choose lock and hide. Great. Now, if you ever need to get those channels back, simply head over to Edit, Channel Control. You can go ahead and scroll down till you find those channels. They're all in alphabetical order. You just go ahead and highlight them, go ahead and move them over. And then with these highlighted, we can go ahead and choose Unlock Selected. I'll go ahead and make sure that they are once again locked. Just wanted to show you that. Okay, so that's one thing down. Our last step will be to take care of the t-shirt. Let's go ahead and bring it back. With it selected, I'm going to go ahead and press 3 on the keyboard to go into smooth preview mode. Remember, this is what counts. If we start to tweak things in low res mode, that same point that we tweak in low res may be just fine in high res mode. Also, something to keep in mind is that we want to tweak according to our shot camera, because again, that's what counts. We don't want to give ourselves unnecessary work. So once the t-shirt is selected, let's go ahead and duplicate it with Control D. We'll go ahead and unlock its translate channels. We'll go ahead and right click and choose Unlock Selected. And now let's go ahead and move this over in the x-axis. Alright, so from there, we'll go ahead and rename this object to BSHP. So that's blend shape t-shirt followed by what it's used for. I'll simply add corrective01 at the end of the name. Okay, so with it selected, we will shift select our base mesh and move to animation, create deformers, blend shape options. Let's go ahead and rename this node to BSHP. And then following that, t-shirt 01. Checking advance, it is set to front of chain. Let's go ahead and choose create. Let's go ahead and select our blend shape node. Here it is. And I'll go ahead and set it to a value of 1. We always want this to be on. Essentially, we'll be animating this through time to fix those interpenetration issues. So once this is set to 1, we can always right click and choose lock selected so that this channel never changes. Now, so we start to scrub through, you can see that the shirt stays behind. Well, didn't we use front of chain? Well, let's go ahead and take a look at our input order on our shirt. So with it selected, we'll head over to our status bar and choose all inputs. So currently our blend shape node is actually right at the top still, even though we used front of chain, which is intended to keep the blend shape node between our skin cluster and tweak nodes. But what we have here is an extra tweak node, and because of that, it hasn't placed the blend shape node properly in our input list. So what we'll do is simply go ahead and middle click and drag the blend shape node so it is in the right place. So it's evaluated after our tweak node, but before our skin cluster node. Alright, so now when we start to scrub through, notice everything is starting to move just fine. So we are now ready to work on correcting the t-shirt. Let's make sure auto key is on. We'll also go to our preferences, and under animation we can make sure we're using a smooth interpolation type. I find that plateau works very well. So let's go ahead and choose that and choose save. From there we'll go to component mode. We'll select all of the vertices on the shirt, and on frame 0 we'll press the S key. So this is our initial pose. We want to make sure that the shirt does not change on this frame. So whenever we change the shirt, we'll always want to go in and grab our points and save the entire pose. And this helps if we need to use this keyframe on 0 for another frame, to just make sure that we revert back to this very shape. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look. If we were to go to our Move tool, double click, we can work with soft selection, but we can set it really low. That way the edits that we make, they're nice and smooth, not rigid. So as we start to kind of scrub through here, taking a look, looks like on about frame 20 or so, the shirt pokes through, so no worries. We'll simply go in and grab the point we need to push back in. I'll go ahead and select the Z-axis. I'll go ahead and start to just pull that in. Now we need to be very careful that when we do that, we're not causing more points than we need to be pulled in as well. So it's just a matter of being really careful and finding the points that need to be tweaked. And that's really all there is to it. So you can see here, frame 20 is nice. We'll go ahead and scrub through. Notice there are no more issues from 0 to 20, so that's nice. And remember, once we make this tweak, let's go ahead and highlight all of our vertices and press the S key to save the entire pose. So now we'll just go through and continue to check for interpenetration between the two objects. Remember also to look through your shot camera, because that will help you to figure out what needs to be fixed and what's good to go. Great. Also remember that as long as the blend shape target was not frozen, so as long as it keeps its offset, you could always translate this however you'd like and tweak your points that way. So let's go ahead and take a look at another frame that we might need to tweak, if there are any. Looks like frame 20 did it for us, but here's a pose on about frame, let's see, it's the worst around frame 100 or so, this little protrusion here. So we could always take the shirt and kind of, let's say, move it forward in the Z-axis if we'd like. Maybe move it over so it's not blocking our character. And then we can go to component mode. Select the vertices that we'll need to tweak. Just go ahead and push those in. Looks like there are a few around the collar that need to be pushed in a bit. So just go ahead and start to translate those in. Great. That's looking much better. And as long as we're careful about this, this will look wonderful in the end. You just don't want to rush through it. Okay, great. So that's looking nice. Again, we'll look through our shot camera and we'll make sure that everything looks good from this angle. Great. It looks like there's a bit of a gap that shows. So we could always take our points here and kind of pull those out so that there is not a huge gap. So there's not that intersecting issue that we see on frame 100. You can just kind of bring those points out a little bit more. Great. All right, so in no time at all, we have tweaked the shirt. What I'll do at this point is simply just go through and tweak any other little issues that we may have. It's a good idea to make sure that your keys aren't too close so that the shirt doesn't seem jittery. But again, I'll pause the video and take care of the other few frames that will need to be fixed. Okay, so I've made sure to change the shape of the target as needed to prevent interpenetration. It's also a matter of doing a render every once in a while just to make sure that those points are not peeking through. If you ever would like to, let's say, transfer a pose, let's say from one frame that you've already tweaked, let's say on frame 0, we could always do is left click and go to that frame, and then middle click to the frame you'd like to transfer that very pose. Notice how the animation does not update. So now when you press the S key, that very pose is now saved on that frame. So that's just a quick trick for transferring animation. I'll go ahead and right click and delete those keys as they actually did some harm. And let's take a look at our final play blast. Here it is. How neat is that? So we sure learned a lot about end cloth, how to use it for clothing that we see all the time in everyday life. If we know how to use the system to create realistic clothing, then we can use it for so much more, can have fun with it and use it for very stylized characters, but it takes having a good foundation first, using realism, in order for us to take advantage of the system and use it for much more creative applications. So I'd like to thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next training course.